It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is no one, because this is the start of a new little mini-series I'm doing around the holidays, because Alive After Reading it takes a lot of work to get people together, especially in December in the United States, where we are, and Canada, generally anywhere, really. It's a busy time of year as we wrap up 2020 and say goodbye to this shithole. This show has an explicit tag, by the way. But I want to kind of help people out with that, so I'm just going to be reading a short story for each episode for a while. I until the end of the year at least, probably, but who knows? There might be a special episode popping up with a guest. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But today, I have for you guys, for you dear listeners, a short story by Roger Zelazny. I've never read it before, so I'll be reacting to this with you. It's called Passage to Dilfar. It was originally published in Fantastic Magazine, February 1965, and it's the first in a sequence of 11 stories called The Dilvish, which is the main character. So, as far as I know, this is Roger Zelazny. He's a fantasy writer, author, created a lot of science fiction fantasy classics, stuff like Amber, Lord of Light, A Night in Lonesome October, and many others. I'm reading from a collection called Power and Light, this is volume 2 of the complete collected works of Roger Zelazny. So this story isn't very long. I want to start with it because I think it's going to be fun. Yeah, so anyway, here we go. The Passage to Dilfar. When Dilvish the Damned came down from Porteroy, they tried to stop him at Karin and again at Tugado, then again at Maystar, Mykar, and Bildash. 5 horsemen had waited for him along the route to Dilfar, and when one flagged, a new rider with a fresh horse would replace him. But none could keep the pace of Black, the horse out of steel, for whom it was said the Colonel of the East had bartered a part of his soul. A day and a night had he ridden to outpace the advancing armies of Lilish, Colonel of the West, for his own men lay stiff and clotted on the rolling fields of Porteroy. When Dilvish had seen that he was the last man standing in the place of slaughter, he had called Black to his side, hauled himself into the saddle that was a part of him, and cried for an escape. Black's gleaming hooves had borne him through a line of pikemen, their staffs turned aside like wheat, and ringing as their metal tips touched against his midnight hide. To Dilfar, he had cried, and Black turned at a right angle in his horse and carried him up the face of a cliff where only goats can go. When Dilvish came by Karin, Black turned his head and said to him, "Great Colonel of the East, they have mined the air and the air beneath the air with the stars of death." "Can you get by them?" asked Dilvish. "If we go by the way of the posting road," said Black, "I may be able to. Then let us make haste to try it." The tiny silver eyes, which looked out from the space beneath space and contained the hell specks of star stuff, blinked and shimmered ahead. They turned off the road. It was on the posting road that the first rider emerged from behind a boulder and called upon Dilvish to halt. His horse was a huge bay without trappings. "Draw rein, Colonel of the East," he had said. Thy men are slaughtered. The road is seeded with death and flanked by the men of Lilish." But Dilvish had swept past him without making an answer, and the man put his spurs to the bay and followed. He paced him all that morning up the road to Tugado, until the bay, who was all lather, stumbled and hurled the man to the rocks. At Tugado, Dilvish found his way blocked by the rider of the blood-red stallion, who fired at him with a bolt from a crossbow. Black reared high into the air, and the bolt glanced off his chest. His nostrils grew with a sound like a cry of great bird coming forth from them. The blood-red stallion leapt from the roadway, then into the field. Black plunged ahead, and the other rider turned his horse and followed. Till the sun reached the top of the sky did he give chase, and then the red horse collapsed in a heap of heaving breath. Dilvish rode on. At Maystar, the way was blocked by the pass of Reshth. A wall of logs filled the narrow trail to twice the height of a man. "Over," said Dilvish, and Black arced into the air like a dark rainbow, going up and across the fortification. Just ahead, at the ending of the pass, the rider of the white mare waited. Black cried out once more, but the mare stood steady. The light reflected from the mirrors of his steel hooves, and his hairless hide was near blue in the bright light of noonday. He did not slow his pace, and the rider of the mare, seeing that he was all of metal, backed away from the pass and drew his sword. Dilvish pulled his own blade from beneath his cloak and parried a head cut as he passed the other rider. Then the man was following after him and crying out, "Though you have passed the stars of death and leapt the barrier here, you shall never make it to Dilfar. Draw rein. You will ride another spirit who has taken the form of a horse, but you'll be stopped at Mykar or Bildesh or before." But the Colonel of the East did not reply, and Black carried him on with long, effortless strides. "You ride a mount which never tires," called out the man, "but he is not proof against Arthur's sorceries. Give me your sword." Dilvish laughed, and his cloak was a wing into the wind. Before the day lapsed into evening, the mare too had fallen, and Dilvish was near Mykar. Black halted suddenly as they approached the stream called Kethi. Dilvish clung to his neck to keep from being thrown off. "The bridge is out," said Black. "I cannot swim." "Can you clear it?" "I do not know, my colonel. It is wide. If I cannot clear it, we will never see surface again. Kethi cuts deep into the earth." And the ambushers came suddenly forth from the trees, and then some on horseback and others on foot, and the foot soldiers bearing pikes, and Dilvish said, "Try." Black was immediately at full gallop, going faster than any horse can run, and the world spun and tumbled about Dilvish as he clung to Black with his knees and his great scarred hands. He cried out as they rose into the air. When they struck the other bank, Black's hooves sank a full span into the rock, and Dilvish reeled in the saddle. He kept his mount, however, and Black freed his hooves. Looking back at the other bank, Dilvish saw the ambushers standing still staring at him, and then looking down into Kethi, and then back up at him again and again at him and Black. Oh, excuse me there. As they moved ahead once more, the rider of the piebald stallion fell in beside him, and said, "Though you've ridden 3 horses into the ground, we will stop you between here and Bildesh. Surrender." Then Dilvish and Black were far ahead of him in the way. "They think you a demon, my mount," he said to Black. The horse chuckled. "Perhaps 'twere better and I were." And they rode the sun out of the sky, and finally the piebald fell, and the rider cursed Dilvish and Black, and they rode on. The trees began to fall at Bildesh. "Deadfalls," cried Dilvish. But Black was already doing his dance of avoidance and passage. He halted rearing and sprang forward from off his hind legs and passed over falling logs. He halted again and did it once more. Then 2 fell at once from the opposite sides of the trail. 2 deep pits, and he leap across. Then a volley of arrows chattered across his hide, one of them wounding Dilvish in the thigh. The 5th horseman bore down upon them. The color of fresh minted gold was this horse, and he named Sunset. And his rider was but a youth and light in the saddle, chosen to carry the pursuit as far as necessary. He bore a death lance that shattered against Black's shoulder without causing him to turn. He raced after Dilvish and called out, "Long have I admired Dilvish, Colonel of the East, so that I do not desire to see him dead. Pray surrender unto me. You will be treated with the courtesies due to your station." Dilvish did laugh and make a reply, saying, "Nay, my lad, better to die than fall to Lilish. On, Black!" And Black doubled his pace, and the boy leaned far forward over Sunset's neck and gave chase. He wore a sword at his side, but he never had a chance to use it. The Sunset ran through the entire night, longer and farther than any of the other pursuers. He too finally fell as the east began to grow pale. As he lay there, trying to rise, the youth cried out, "Though you have escaped me, you shall fall to the lance." Then was Dilvish called the Damned, riding alone in the hills above Dilfar, bearing his message to that city. And though he rode the horse of steel called Black, still did he fear to encounter with Lance of the invincible armor before he delivered his message. As he started on the last downward trail, his way was blocked a final time by an armored man and an armored horse. The man held the way completely, and though he was visored, Dilvish knew from his devices that he was Lance, the right hand of the Colonel of the West. "Halt and draw rein, Dilvish," he called out. "You cannot pass me." Lance stood like a statue. Dilvish halted Black and waited. "I call upon you to surrender now." "No," said Dilvish. "Then must I slay you?" Dilvish drew his sword. The other man laughed. "Know you not that my armor is unbreachable?" "No," said Dilvish. "Very well then," he said with something like a chuckle. "We are alone here. You have my word. Dismount, and I'll do I'll do so at the same time. When you see it is futile, you may have your life. You are my prisoner." They dismounted. "You are wounded," said Lance. Dilvish cut for his neck without replying, hoping to burst the joint. It held, however, and the metal bore not even a scratch to tell of the mighty blow that might have beheaded another. You must see now that my armor cannot be breached. It was forged by the salamanders themselves, and bathed in the blood of 10 virgins. Dilvish cut at his head, as he had cut at him. And as he had cut at him, Dilvish had circled slowly to the left, so that now Lance stood with his back to the horse of steel called Black. "Now, Black," cried Dilvish. Then Black rear high up on his hind legs and fall forward. Then did Black rear high up on his hind legs and fall forward, bringing his front hooves down toward Lance. The man called Lance turned rapidly around and they struck him in the chest. He fell. 2 sharp, shining hoof marks had been imprinted upon his breastplate. "You were right," said Dilvish. "It is still unbreached." Lance moaned again. "And I could slay thee now with the blade through the eye slit of thy visor, but I will not, as I did not down thee fairly. When you recover, tell Lilash that Dilfar will be ready for his coming. 'Twere better he withdraw." "I'll have a sack for thy head when we take the city," said Lance. "I'll take thee on the plain before the city," said Dilvish, and he remounted Black and descended the trail, leaving him there on the ground. And as they rode away, Black said to him, "When you meet, strike at the marks of my hooves. The armor will yield there." When he came into the city, Dilvish proceeded through the streets to the palace without speaking to those who clustered about him. He entered the palace and announced himself. "I'm Dilvish, Colonel of the East," he said, "and I'm here to report that Porteroy has fallen and is in the hands of Lilash. The armies of the Colonel of the West move in the direction that should be here 2 days hence. Make haste to arm. Dilfar must not fall." "Blow then the trumpets," ordered the king, starting from the throne, "and muster the warriors. We must prepare for battle." And as the trumpets sounded, Dilvish drank him a glass of good red wine of Dilfar. And as meats and loaves were brought to him, he wondered once again at the strength of Lance's armor, and he knew that he must try its invincibility once more. And that's the story. It's only the first of this series, so maybe I'll try again with more of them later. This was very fun to me. I thought this story was really enjoyable, and it's kind of a classic Zelazny. There's a lot of horse riding, fighting, sword fights. It's very action heavy, of course, as you may have noticed. You just listened to it. But let me know what you think about it, because honestly, my reactions are, I love it. I know I love Roger Zelazny's work. It's my kind of thing. And it has this kind of almost transcendent feeling, just like a lot of his greatest works do, of like, this is kind of beyond time in a way. It's equally old-fashioned as it is timeless, if you ask me. Maybe that's too strong of a reaction to this story instantly, but it felt very mythic. Let me put it that way. Mythological. So, thanks for listening, everybody. You can contact my show at tim@timneedwriter.com if you want to send me an email. And you can find us on Facebook at Tim Needwriter. Also, don't be forgetting, I have my books out there. I'm getting talking like that story now. Don't be forgetting, talking a little reversed. But don't forget, you can find my books on Amazon.com. I write fantasy as well. Demon Scrolls out. Orphan Mage seems to be pretty popular these days among the people who follow my stuff. And thanks for listening. You can find more of us at mentalcellarpublications.com. And you can find more of me at timneedwriter.com. Thanks for listening, and have a good week.